The reporters gathered like vultures around the rusted chain-link fence, their cameras clicking frantically as Marcus Chen stood in front of what looked like a graveyard of American dreams. Behind him stretched 73 acres of cracked concrete, abandoned launch pads and buildings so deteriorated that weeds grew through their foundations. The Meridian Space Research Facility had been closed for 15 years, a relic of failed government projects and budget cuts that left it rotting under the Nevada sun. The inheritance papers crumpled in Marcus's weathered hands as another reporter shouted a question about his plans for the cosmic junkyard. His 8-year-old daughter Emma tugged at his sleeve, asking why everyone was laughing at them, and Marcus realized that inheriting what his late uncle called the future might have been the cruelest joke of all. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Chen had been fixing air conditioning units in Las Vegas apartment complexes for 12 years, ever since Emma was born, and everything in his life shifted toward survival mode. His hands, permanently stained with refrigerant and scarred from countless repairs, told the story of a man who'd learned to make do with whatever work paid the bills. Most people saw him as just another maintenance guy, invisible in his gray uniform, climbing through attics and crawling under buildings while the city's glittering facade hummed with artificial coolness above him. What they didn't know was that Marcus had once been Dr. Marcus Chen, aerospace engineer, MIT graduate, and the youngest project lead ever assigned to NASA's Experimental Propulsion Research Division. That life had ended abruptly 8 years ago when his wife Sarah died in a car accident, leaving him with a newborn daughter, and a grief so profound that he couldn't bear to look at the stars anymore. Every equation he'd memorized, every theory he'd developed, every dream of pushing humanity toward the cosmos felt like a betrayal of the earthbound reality that now defined his existence. He'd walked away from NASA 6 months after Sarah's funeral, sold their house in Houston, and moved to Vegas where nobody knew his history. The desert city offered something precious to a broken man: anonymity. He could disappear into the endless sprawl of strip malls and apartment complexes, fix things that stayed fixed, and focus entirely on raising Emma without the weight of cosmic ambitions pressing down on him. Uncle Raymond had been the only family member who understood Marcus's choice to abandon aerospace engineering. Raymond Chen had been NASA's chief of operations during the Apollo missions, a man who dedicated his entire life to space exploration, only to watch funding dry up and programs get canceled for political expedience. When Raymond retired, he'd used his savings to purchase the abandoned Meridian facility, claiming he wanted to preserve it for future generations who might rediscover America's hunger for the stars. Marcus hadn't spoken to his uncle in 5 years when the lawyer called. Raymond had died alone in the facility's old control room, apparently working on something he'd never shared with anyone. The inheritance was straightforward: 73 acres of deteriorating infrastructure, mountains of outdated equipment, and property taxes that would bankrupt Marcus within 2 years. The lawyer had suggested he sell immediately to salvage what little value remained, but Emma had other ideas. When Marcus took her to see the property for the first time, she'd run through the empty corridors with wonder instead of disappointment. She'd climbed into the driver's seat of an old lunar rover prototype and announced that she was going to be an astronaut someday, just like the people who used to work here. She'd found Raymond's personal office, filled with photographs from the golden age of space exploration, and declared that her great-uncle must have been very important to have so many pictures with astronauts. The media attention started when a local news station ran a human interest piece about the Vegas maintenance man who inherited a space center. The story was meant to be heartwarming, but the comments section revealed how the public really felt about Marcus's situation. People called him delusional for keeping the property instead of selling. They mocked his background, questioning how someone who fixed air conditioners could possibly understand the value of a former NASA facility. The story went viral for all the wrong reasons, turning Marcus and Emma into internet memes about unrealistic expectations and inherited burdens. Property developers circled like sharks, offering cash buyouts that would solve Marcus's immediate financial problems while ensuring the facility's complete destruction. Henderson Holdings, led by CEO Jonathan Blackwater, made increasingly aggressive offers, each one accompanied by thinly veiled threats about property taxes and environmental cleanup costs that could financially destroy Marcus if he continued to resist their acquisition attempts. The mockery intensified when Marcus announced his intention to restore the facility's basic operations. Local newspapers ran editorial cartoons showing him with a wrench trying to fix a rocket ship. Social media influencers made reaction videos to his earnest interviews about preserving scientific heritage. The hashtag Marcus Space Dreams became shorthand for delusional thinking and misplaced priorities. Emma absorbed every cruel comment, every dismissive laugh, every suggestion that her father was either crazy or stupid for holding on to Raymond's legacy. She started getting into fights at school when classmates repeated things their parents had said about the space janitor and his impossible dreams. Marcus watched his daughter's enthusiasm slowly curdle into defensive anger, and he began to question whether his stubborn attachment to the facility was harming the person who mattered most. The worst part was the isolation. Other single parents in Emma's school community treated Marcus like he was unstable, someone whose judgment couldn't be trusted because he'd chosen sentiment over practicality. Repair jobs became harder to find as his viral notoriety made him recognizable to customers who didn't want the space guy working on their systems. The facility's property taxes loomed like a countdown timer, marking the months until financial reality would force him to surrender Raymond's final project. Marcus spent his evenings walking through the facility's empty corridors, trying to understand what Raymond had seen in this place that justified spending his final years alone among the ghosts of canceled missions. The buildings were in worse condition than the inheritance papers had indicated. Electrical systems had been stripped by scavengers, plumbing had burst during freezing winters, and years of desert weather had turned sophisticated laboratories into expensive ruins. But in Raymond's personal workshop, Marcus discovered something that changed everything. Hidden behind a false wall, he found detailed blueprints for an electromagnetic propulsion system that defied conventional physics. The designs were accompanied by thousands of pages of calculations, test results, and theoretical frameworks that demonstrated Raymond had been working on revolutionary technology until the day he died. The equations were elegant and complex, describing methods for achieving thrust without traditional fuel consumption, concepts that could transform space exploration if they actually worked. More disturbing was the evidence that Raymond hadn't been working alone. Shipping receipts showed deliveries of exotic materials worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Communication logs revealed correspondence with scientists from around the world, all working on classified projects related to electromagnetic field manipulation. Laboratory notes described successful bench tests of small-scale prototypes that had achieved impossible efficiency ratings. Emma found Marcus in the workshop one night, surrounded by papers he'd been studying for hours. She climbed into his lap and asked why he looked scared. Marcus realized he was scared, not of failure, but of the possibility that Raymond's work represented a genuine breakthrough that could revolutionize human space travel. The implications were staggering, and the responsibility of protecting such knowledge felt overwhelming for someone who'd spent 8 years deliberately avoiding scientific complexity. The breakthrough came when Marcus decided to test one of Raymond's smaller prototypes. The device was roughly the size of a microwave, with electromagnetic coils arranged in a configuration that violated several established principles of physics. According to Raymond's notes, the device should generate measurable thrust without expelling reaction mass, a concept that mainstream science considered impossible based on Newton's third law of motion. Marcus assembled the prototype in the facility's old testing chamber, following Raymond's instructions with the precision he'd once applied to NASA projects. When he activated the device, the electromagnetic fields it generated were unlike anything in conventional propulsion literature. The thrust measurements were minimal but consistent, proving that Raymond had discovered something that challenged fundamental assumptions about space travel. The discovery terrified and exhilarated Marcus in equal measure. If Raymond's work was legitimate, it represented the kind of technological leap that occurred once in a century. But proving its validity would require resources, expertise, and credibility that Marcus couldn't provide alone. Worse, the implications for national security meant that the wrong people learning about Raymond's research could result in the technology being classified or weaponized. Marcus began reaching out to former colleagues at NASA, carefully describing Raymond's research without revealing its full scope. The responses ranged from polite skepticism to genuine interest, but everyone agreed that such revolutionary claims would require extensive peer review and verification. The process could take years, and Marcus didn't have years before financial pressures forced him to sell the facility. The situation became more urgent when Marcus discovered that someone else knew about Raymond's work. Jonathan Blackwater's acquisition offers had become increasingly specific about purchasing the facility's research assets, along with the real estate. Security cameras Marcus had installed caught unmarked vehicles conducting surveillance of the property. Phone calls to the facility's landline came from numbers that disconnected immediately when answered. Emma's safety became Marcus's primary concern when she reported strangers asking questions about her father's work during school pickup. The 8-year-old didn't understand the implications, but Marcus recognized the signs of corporate espionage focused on technologies with military applications. Henderson Holdings wasn't just interested in the land, they somehow knew about Raymond's electromagnetic propulsion research and wanted to acquire it through Marcus's financial desperation. The pressure intensified when property tax assessments were mysteriously increased by 400%, creating a financial burden that would force Marcus into bankruptcy within months. The timing was too convenient to be coincidental, suggesting that Blackwater had connections within local government agencies. Marcus realized he was being systematically cornered into selling Raymond's life work to people who would exploit it for profit rather than advancing human space exploration. Marcus made the decision to contact NASA directly, hoping that his former employers would recognize the value of Raymond's research and provide protection from corporate acquisition. The initial response was disappointing, bureaucratic channels moved slowly, and Marcus's reputation as the space janitor preceded him into meetings with officials who struggled to take his claims seriously.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Everything changed when Dr. Elena Vasquez, NASA's current director of advanced propulsion research, agreed to visit the facility personally. Elena had known Raymond during his active years and respected his unconventional approach to solving engineering problems. She also knew Marcus's professional background and understood that his assessment of Raymond's work carried more weight than media coverage suggested. Elena's first examination of Raymond's prototypes confirmed Marcus's most optimistic assessments. The electromagnetic propulsion system demonstrated thrust characteristics that shouldn't exist according to established physics, but the measurements were undeniable. Raymond had somehow created a working model of technology that NASA's theoretical division had been pursuing unsuccessfully for decades. The implications were staggering. Raymond's propulsion system could reduce the cost of space travel by orders of magnitude, making Mars missions economically feasible and opening possibilities for interstellar exploration that had previously existed only in science fiction. The technology could revolutionize satellite deployment, space station construction, and deep space research in ways that would transform human civilization's relationship with the cosmos. But Elena also confirmed Marcus's worst fears about the technology's vulnerability. Foreign governments and private military contractors would pay billions for access to propulsion systems that could provide decisive advantages in satellite warfare and space-based weapons platforms. Raymond's peaceful research could easily become the foundation for a new generation of orbital weapons that would destabilize international relations. Elena's visit triggered a cascade of federal interest that transformed the abandoned facility into the center of the most classified space technology project in American history. Within weeks, the site was surrounded by unmarked vehicles, electronic surveillance equipment, and personnel who refused to identify their agency affiliations. The abandoned space center had become the focus of national security resources that Marcus couldn't have imagined. The media attention that had initially mocked Marcus suddenly shifted as rumors circulated about federal involvement in the facility's operations. Reporters who had dismissed him as delusional began investigating why government agencies were treating a cosmic junkyard like a matter of national importance. The harassment and ridicule transformed into intense curiosity about what Marcus had discovered among Raymond's possessions. Jonathan Blackwater's acquisition attempts became increasingly desperate as federal protection made direct purchase impossible. Henderson Holdings filed lawsuits challenging Marcus's ownership, claiming that Raymond's will had been improperly executed and that the facility's environmental hazards made private ownership illegal. Corporate lawyers argued that the site required professional remediation that only their company could provide. The legal battles revealed the extent of corporate interest in Raymond's research. Court documents showed that Henderson Holdings had been monitoring the facility for years, waiting for Raymond's death to acquire his work through Marcus's expected financial desperation. Blackwater's company had connections to defense contractors who specialized in converting civilian technologies into military applications. Marcus found himself at the center of a conflict between federal agencies determined to protect Raymond's research and corporate interests focused on profitable exploitation. His role shifted from inheritor to guardian of technology that could reshape human civilization's future in space. The responsibility was overwhelming for someone who'd spent 8 years avoiding such complexity, but Emma's enthusiasm for their family's contribution to space exploration helped Marcus find courage he'd forgotten he possessed. The facility's transformation accelerated as NASA committed resources to developing Raymond's prototypes into operational propulsion systems. Teams of engineers and physicists arrived daily, converting abandoned laboratories into cutting-edge research spaces. The cosmic junkyard became a showcase of advanced technology that validated Raymond's vision of preserving the site for future scientific breakthroughs. Emma thrived in the environment, befriending researchers who treated her questions about space travel with the seriousness they deserved. Her enthusiasm reminded Marcus of his own childhood fascination with aerospace engineering, the passion that had led him to NASA before grief redirected his priorities toward earthbound concerns. Watching his daughter explore the facility with wonder instead of mockery helped Marcus reconnect with dreams he'd abandoned after Sarah's death. The mockery that had defined public perception of Marcus's inheritance evaporated as news outlets reported on the facility's federal designation as a critical research site. The same social media influencers who had ridiculed his space dreams began creating content about the importance of preserving scientific heritage. The hashtag #MarcusSpaceDreams became associated with visionary thinking rather than delusional expectations. Local community leaders who had dismissed Marcus as an impractical dreamer began treating him as a valuable neighbor whose property generated federal investment in their region. School administrators who had questioned his judgment started inviting him to speak at science education events. The transformation in public perception was swift and complete, reflecting society's tendency to retroactively validate success while forgetting previous skepticism. Marcus's restoration work on the facility became a collaboration with NASA engineers who recognized the value of preserving the site's historical significance alongside its technological importance. The crumbling buildings were renovated using methods that honored their original purposes while incorporating modern safety and efficiency standards. The facility evolved into a symbol of Meridian space exploration's past, present, and future. The project's scope expanded as Raymond's research revealed applications beyond space propulsion. The electromagnetic field manipulation techniques could revolutionize energy generation, transportation systems, and manufacturing processes in ways that would benefit civilian populations worldwide. What had begun as aerospace research became the foundation for technologies that could address climate change, resource scarcity, and economic inequality. Marcus's role in the project evolved from caretaker to technical consultant as his aerospace engineering background proved essential for understanding Raymond's unconventional approaches to solving complex problems. The skills he'd abandoned after Sarah's death became crucial for translating Raymond's theoretical breakthroughs into practical applications. His years of fixing it Elena offered Marcus a position as NASA's liaison for the facility's development, a role that would restore his career while allowing him to remain close to Emma and honor Raymond's legacy. The opportunity represented everything Marcus had walked away from 8 years earlier, but now the prospect of returning to aerospace engineering felt like healing rather than betrayal of his earthbound commitments. The legal battles with Henderson Holdings concluded when federal agencies revealed the extent of corporate espionage attempts targeting Raymond's research. Jonathan Blackwater's company faced criminal charges for attempting to acquire classified technology through fraudulent means. The lawsuits challenging Marcus's ownership were dismissed, and additional federal protections were established to prevent future corporate interference. Emma's school experiences transformed as her father's work gained recognition within the scientific community. Classmates who had mocked their family's space dreams began asking for tours of the facility and advice about pursuing careers in aerospace engineering. Teachers who had worried about Emma's unrealistic aspirations started encouraging her interest in space exploration as preparation for future educational opportunities. The facility's restoration attracted international attention as foreign space agencies requested partnerships to develop Raymond's propulsion technology for peaceful exploration purposes. The site became a hub for collaborative research that enhanced Marcus found himself coordinating with scientists from around the world, all working toward common goals of expanding human presence in space. Marcus's decision to preserve Raymond's legacy rather than selling for immediate financial relief became a case study in the importance of protecting scientific heritage from short-term economic pressures. Universities began teaching courses about the facility's history as an example of how individual determination could preserve knowledge that benefits all humanity. The story challenged assumptions about the relationship between practical concerns and visionary thinking. The transformation of the Meridian Space Research Facility from abandoned ruin to cutting-edge research center validated Raymond's belief that America's commitment to space exploration would eventually be renewed. The site that had been dismissed as a cosmic junkyard became proof that technological breakthroughs often emerge from unexpected sources when visionary individuals receive appropriate support and resources. Emma's 8th birthday party was held in the facility's restored mission control room, surrounded by the same equipment that had guided humanity's first steps toward the stars. The celebration included NASA engineers, international researchers, and local community members who had witnessed the site's remarkable transformation. The little girl who had announced her intention to become an astronaut while sitting in an old lunar rover prototype was now surrounded by people working to make her dreams achievable. Marcus's journey from mocked maintenance worker to respected aerospace engineer demonstrated that professional setbacks don't permanently define individual potential. His willingness to honor family obligations while pursuing technological advancement created opportunities that benefited both personal fulfillment and human progress. The facility became a symbol of resilience and the importance of maintaining hope despite temporary setbacks. The electromagnetic propulsion technology developed from Raymond's research entered operational testing phases that confirmed its potential to revolutionize space travel. The first missions using the new propulsion systems were scheduled for the following year, with plans for Mars exploration and deep space research that had been impossible using conventional rocket technology. The abandoned space center had become the launching point for humanity's next great leap into the cosmos. Marcus stood in the facility's observation deck one evening, watching Emma help researchers calibrate equipment for upcoming test flights. The little girl who had asked why everyone was laughing at them now worked confidently alongside scientists who valued her curiosity and intelligence. The mockery that had once defined their situation had been replaced by respect earned through perseverance and dedication to principles larger than immediate convenience. The inheritance that had seemed like a cruel joke had become the foundation for technological advances that would benefit generations of space explorers. Raymond's gift to his nephew wasn't just property and equipment, it was the opportunity to contribute to humanity's greatest adventure while honoring family bonds that transcend individual ambition. The facility's transformation from ruin to research center proved that visionary thinking, when combined with practical determination, could overcome seemingly impossible obstacles. Marcus realized that his years as a maintenance worker hadn't been a retreat from his aerospace engineering career, but preparation for understanding how complex systems function in real-world conditions. The skills he'd developed fixing air conditioning units in Las Vegas apartment complexes had taught him patience, attention to detail, and respect for practical considerations that made him more effective in research environments than he'd been during his first NASA employment. The story of the poor single dad who was laughed at for inheriting an abandoned space center became an inspiration for individuals facing ridicule for pursuing unconventional goals. Marcus's willingness to endure mockery while protecting Raymond's legacy demonstrated that society's initial judgments about visionary projects often reflect limited understanding rather than objective assessment of potential value. Emma's confidence in her father's decisions, even when adults questioned his judgment, proved that children sometimes possess clearer vision about important matters than experienced professionals.
Her enthusiasm for space exploration had sustained Marcus through periods of doubt and financial pressure that might otherwise have forced him to abandon Raymond's final project. The facility's success was as much Emma's achievement as her father's. The federal investment in Raymond's research exceeded $1.2 billion as the project's scope expanded to include multiple applications of electromagnetic field manipulation technology. The abandoned Space Center became the most valuable scientific facility in the American Southwest, generating economic benefits for the entire region while advancing human knowledge about propulsion physics. Marcus's inheritance had transformed from liability to national treasure. Jonathan Blackwater's attempt to acquire the facility through financial manipulation demonstrated the ongoing tension between corporate profit motives and scientific advancement for public benefit. The legal protections established around Raymond's research became precedents for defending other scientific heritage sites from similar exploitation. Marcus's resistance to selling had protected knowledge that belonged to all humanity rather than private interests. The international recognition of the facility's importance attracted researchers from around the world who contributed additional expertise to developing Raymond's theoretical breakthroughs into practical applications. The site became a symbol of international cooperation in space exploration, proving that scientific advancement transcends national boundaries when focused on common goals of expanding human knowledge and capabilities. Marcus's story challenged assumptions about the relationship between formal education and practical wisdom, demonstrating that valuable insights can emerge from unexpected sources when individuals possess both technical knowledge and real-world experience. His combination of aerospace engineering background and maintenance work experience provided perspectives that purely academic researchers might have missed during the development process. The facility's educational programs attracted students from around the world who wanted to study at the site where revolutionary propulsion technology was being developed. Emma's school established a partnership with the research center that allowed local children to participate in age-appropriate science education activities. The mockery that had once isolated Marcus and Emma from their community was replaced by pride in their contributions to human advancement. The restoration of the Meridian Space Research Facility became a model for preserving other abandoned scientific sites that might contain valuable research or historical significance. Government agencies develop policies for evaluating such properties before allowing their destruction or conversion to commercial purposes. Raymond's vision of protecting scientific heritage for future generations influenced national approaches to preserving technological knowledge. Marcus's decision to honor his uncle's legacy despite financial pressures and social mockery proved that individual determination could preserve knowledge that benefits all humanity. The facility's transformation from cosmic junkyard to cutting-edge research center demonstrated that society's initial judgments about visionary projects often underestimate their potential value. The story became a reminder that breakthrough technologies sometimes emerge from the most unexpected sources when visionary individuals receive appropriate support. The encrypted communication arrived at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, routing through 17 different servers before reaching Marcus's personal laptop in the facility's secure communications room. The message contained coordinates, a timestamp and a single line of text that made his blood run cold. "Your uncle's work was never about propulsion. The real project begins tomorrow." The sender's identity was masked behind layers of digital anonymization, but the message's encryption key matched protocols that only Raymond's closest research partners would have possessed. Marcus had spent 6 months believing that electromagnetic propulsion represented the pinnacle of his uncle's scientific achievements, but this communication suggested that Raymond's most important work remained hidden. The coordinates led to a section of the facility that Marcus had never fully explored, deep underground chambers that predated the official construction records. The timestamp indicated that someone expected him to be there in 18 hours, ready to discover whatever Raymond had truly been developing during his final years of isolation. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived at the facility before dawn, her emergency security clearance allowing access despite the early hour. The encrypted message had been simultaneously delivered to her NASA account, confirming that Raymond's mysterious research partner wanted both Marcus and the federal government's chief propulsion scientist present for this revelation. Elena's expression conveyed the same mixture of excitement and apprehension that Marcus felt as they prepared to descend into sections of the facility that had been sealed since Raymond's death. The underground chambers were accessed through a maintenance tunnel that connected to the facility's original construction from the 1960s. Raymond had apparently spent decades secretly expanding these spaces, creating laboratories and testing areas that didn't appear on any official blueprints. The air recycling systems were more sophisticated than anything in the upper levels, suggesting that these hidden spaces had been designed for extended occupation during sensitive research phases. Emma insisted on accompanying them despite Marcus's concerns about her safety in unexplored areas. Her argument was characteristically logical for an 8-year-old. She had found more of Raymond's hidden compartments than either adult. Her small size allowed access to spaces they couldn't reach, and whatever Raymond had been working on might require her particular perspective to understand fully. Marcus reluctantly agreed, knowing that Emma's intuitive understanding of her great-uncle's thinking patterns had proven invaluable during previous discoveries. The first chamber they entered contained equipment that defied immediate classification. Massive crystalline structures were suspended in electromagnetic fields that created geometric patterns unlike anything in conventional physics literature. The crystals pulsed with internal light that responded to their presence, suggesting some form of consciousness or automated monitoring system.
Raymond's notebooks, scattered throughout the space, contained references to consciousness resonance fields and quantum awareness interfaces that ventured far beyond mechanical engineering into territories that bordered on science fiction. Elena's scientific training provided no framework for understanding what they were observing. The crystalline structures appeared to be both technological devices and something approaching biological organisms, responsive to electromagnetic stimulation in ways that suggested primitive intelligence. Raymond's notes described years of communication attempts with these entities, gradually developing protocols for information exchange that transcended traditional concepts of computer interfaces. Marcus recognized elements of his uncle's handwriting that dated back 15 years, indicating that this research had been Raymond's primary focus throughout the period when he'd claimed to be working on electromagnetic propulsion. The propulsion technology had apparently been a secondary discovery, almost an accidental byproduct of investigations into consciousness manipulation and quantum field interactions. Raymond's true goal had been establishing communication with intelligences that existed outside conventional definitions of life. The communications protocols that Raymond had developed required human operators to interface directly with the crystalline entities through electromagnetic field generators that synchronized brainwave patterns with quantum fluctuations in the crystals. The process was described as mentally exhausting but profoundly enlightening, providing access to knowledge that no terrestrial science had previously achieved. Raymond's final entries suggested that he had been preparing to share this discovery with selected individuals who could handle its implications responsibly. Emma approached the largest crystalline structure with the fearless curiosity that had characterized exploration of the facility's conventional edges. When she placed her hand on the crystal's surface, the entire chamber filled with harmonious resonance patterns that created complex geometric projections in the air around them. The crystal's response to Emma's touch was more pronounced than anything Raymond's notes had described, suggesting that children's developing neural pathways might be particularly compatible with the entity's communication methods. The projections that filled the chamber conveyed information through direct mental transmission rather than traditional visual or auditory channels. Marcus found himself understanding concepts about space-time manipulation, energy field dynamics, and consciousness expansion that his aerospace engineering education had never addressed. The entities inhabiting the crystals were apparently refugees from a distant stellar system, survivors of a cosmic catastrophe who had embedded their consciousness in these technological artifacts to preserve their civilization's knowledge. Elena's attempts to document the experience using conventional scientific instruments proved futile as the entity's communication methods operated outside electromagnetic spectrums that human technology could measure. The information transfer occurred through quantum entanglement processes that connected consciousness directly to the crystalline matrices, bypassing sensory organs entirely. Traditional recording equipment captured only silence and darkness, while profound knowledge flowed between the entities and their human contacts. The entities revealed that Raymond had spent his final years learning to serve as a translator between their advanced consciousness and human scientific understanding. The electromagnetic propulsion technology had been their gift to humanity, a relatively simple application of principles they had mastered millennia ago. Their true knowledge encompassed technologies that could transform human civilization's relationship with energy, matter, and consciousness itself, but they required assurance that such power would be used responsibly. Marcus understood why Raymond had hidden this discovery from government and corporate interests that would inevitably seek to weaponize advanced technologies. The entity's knowledge included methods for manipulating matter at the atomic level, creating unlimited clean energy, and expanding human consciousness beyond its current biological limitations. In the wrong hands, such capabilities could destroy human civilization or transform it into something unrecognizable to current humanity. The entities had been observing human development for decades, waiting for individuals who demonstrated the wisdom and ethical foundation necessary to handle their knowledge responsibly. Raymond's decades of patient communication had convinced them that humanity might be ready for gradual introduction to their technologies, but only through carefully selected intermediaries who prioritize collective benefit over personal advancement. Emma's natural affinity for communicating with the entities exceeded anything Raymond had achieved during his years of careful preparation. The child's developing mind seemed particularly compatible with their consciousness path, allowing information transfer that was more complete and nuanced than adult humans could achieve. The entities expressed particular interest in Emma's perspective on how their technologies might benefit children's education and development worldwide. The communication session lasted for several hours, during which Marcus and Elena received comprehensive briefings on technologies that could solve every major challenge facing human civilization. Methods for atmospheric restoration, unlimited food production, interstellar travel, and consciousness expansion were transmitted with the casual ease of sharing cooking recipes. The entity's knowledge was so far beyond current human science that implementing even their simplest suggestions would require decades of careful development. When the communication session concluded, Marcus found himself faced with the most important decision of his life. The entities offered to share their complete knowledge base with humanity, but only under conditions that would prevent its misuse for destructive purposes. The technologies would be released gradually, through educational programs that emphasized ethical development alongside technical advancement. Marcus would serve as the primary liaison between the entities and human institutions, but the responsibility for guiding humanity's technological evolution would rest entirely on his shoulders. Elena's scientific excitement was tempered by recognition of the profound challenges that such advanced knowledge would create for existing power structures. Governments and corporations that controlled current energy, transportation, and manufacturing systems would resist technologies that made their industries obsolete overnight. The entity's gifts could trigger economic upheaval and political conflicts that might destroy civilization rather than advancing it. The entities acknowledged these concerns but indicated that humanity's environmental destruction and social inequality had reached critical thresholds that required intervention regardless of short-term disruption. Their technologies offered the only realistic path for human survival beyond the next century, but implementing them would require courage and wisdom that had rarely been demonstrated by terrestrial leadership. Marcus's role would involve protecting their knowledge from those who would abuse it while gradually introducing concepts that could transform human civilization peacefully.
Marcus accepted the responsibility despite his awareness of the dangers involved. Emma's enthusiasm for the entity's educational proposals convinced him that their knowledge could benefit future generations even if current political systems resisted change. The little girl who had insisted that her great-uncle must have been working on something important had been more correct than anyone had imagined. The entities provided Marcus with communication protocols that would allow regular contact for guidance as humanity began integrating their technologies. The crystalline structures would remain in the facility's underground chambers, protected by security measures that prevented unauthorized access while allowing continued research. Emma would participate in educational programs designed to help children understand advanced consciousness concepts that adults struggled to comprehend. Dr. Vasquez faced the challenge of briefing federal agencies about discoveries that exceeded their classification frameworks. The entity's technologies required new categories of security protection and international cooperation agreements that transcended traditional concepts of national defense. NASA's role evolved from space exploration agency to humanity's primary interface with intelligences that could guide human development toward cosmic citizenship. The facility's surface operations continued developing electromagnetic propulsion systems while the underground chambers became humanity's first embassy to extraterrestrial intelligence. Marcus found himself dividing his time between conventional aerospace engineering projects and consciousness expansion research that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. The maintenance worker who had been mocked for inheriting a cosmic junkyard had become humanity's ambassador to beings whose knowledge could reshape the future of consciousness itself. Emma's education expanded to include concepts that no human child had ever studied, preparing her for a future where the boundaries between technology and consciousness would become increasingly fluid. The entities expressed particular interest in her generation's potential for developing hybrid thinking patterns that combined human creativity with their advanced logical frameworks. Emma's natural intelligence was enhanced through consciousness expansion techniques that the entities had refined over millennia. The first practical applications of the entity's knowledge focused on environmental restoration technologies that could address climate change without disrupting existing economic systems. Atmospheric processors based on their designs could remove carbon dioxide while generating clean energy, providing immediate benefits that demonstrated the value of their cooperation. These initial projects served as proof of concept demonstrations for more advanced technologies that would be introduced gradually. International space agencies received invitations to participate in consciousness expansion programs that would prepare their personnel for eventual contact with other refugee populations scattered throughout the galaxy. The entities revealed that dozens of civilizations had been destroyed by cosmic catastrophes similar to the one that had displaced their own people. Earth's development as a refuge world for displaced consciousnesses would require unprecedented cooperation between human institutions and beings whose existence challenged fundamental assumptions about life and intelligence.
Marcus's childhood dreams of space exploration evolved into responsibilities for guiding humanity's transition to cosmic citizenship. The man who had walked away from NASA after personal tragedy found himself coordinating humanity's first diplomatic relationships with intelligences that predated human civilization by millions of years. The facility that had been dismissed as worthless became the foundation for transforming human understanding of consciousness, technology, and humanity's place in the cosmic community. The entity's educational programs attracted volunteers from around the world who wanted to participate in consciousness expansion research. The underground chambers were expanded to accommodate larger groups of human students learning to communicate through quantum entanglement protocols. Traditional boundaries between science, philosophy, and spirituality dissolved as researchers explored the entity's integrated approach to understanding reality through multiple awareness levels simultaneously. Emma's role in these programs highlighted the importance of childhood development in preparing future generations for expanded consciousness capabilities. The entity's teaching methods were specifically designed to work with developing neural pathways that adults could no longer access easily. Children who participated in their educational programs demonstrated enhanced creativity, problem-solving abilities, and empathy that surpassed anything previously observed in human development research. The facility's transformation from abandoned space center to consciousness research institute attracted attention from academic institutions worldwide. Universities established exchange programs that allowed their most advanced students to study under the entity's guidance while contributing human perspectives to their research. The collaboration produced hybrid technologies that combined human engineering creativity with the entity's advanced theoretical knowledge. Marcus discovered that his years of practical maintenance work had provided ideal preparation for understanding the entity's approach to integrating consciousness with technology. Their devices required operators who could think both analytically and intuitively, combining technical precision with awareness of consciousness dynamics. The skills he had developed fixing complex systems in challenging conditions translated directly to maintaining the sophisticated interfaces required for consciousness expansion research. Corporate interests led by Henderson Holdings continued attempting to acquire access to the facility's underground research, but federal protection had expanded to include classification levels that prevented even congressional oversight. Jonathan Blackwater's legal challenges evolved into attempts to discredit Marcus's competency for handling technologies that exceeded human understanding. The entities responded by demonstrating defensive capabilities that made unauthorized intrusion impossible without destroying the crystalline communication systems. The first group of international students completed consciousness expansion training that qualified them to serve as liaisons between the entities and their home countries. These graduates returned to their nations with communication protocols that enabled global coordination of humanity's technological development. The facility became the hub of a worldwide network of consciousness researchers working to implement the entity's guidance responsibly. Emma's 9th birthday celebration included representatives from 6 different nations who had traveled to the facility for consciousness expansion training. The little girl who had found her great-uncle's hidden chambers was now recognized as humanity's youngest expert on extraterrestrial communication protocols. Her natural ability to interface with the crystalline entities exceeded that of trained scientists with decades of relevant experience. The entities revealed that Raymond's final years had been devoted to preparing humanity for this contact through careful documentation of their communication methods and technological principles. His apparent isolation had actually involved intensive collaboration with their consciousness to develop protocols that human minds could eventually comprehend. Raymond's death had been precisely timed to coincide with Marcus's inheritance of the facility and Emma's optimal age for beginning consciousness expansion training. Marcus understood that his family's involvement in this project extended far beyond coincidence or inheritance. The entities had been influencing events for decades to ensure that their knowledge would be entrusted to individuals with the ethical foundation necessary for responsible implementation. Emma's birth, Sarah's death, and Marcus's subsequent career changes had all occurred within a carefully orchestrated sequence designed to prepare him for this ultimate responsibility. The realization that his personal tragedies had served larger purposes initially disturbed Marcus, but the entity's explanations helped him understand that free will had been preserved throughout their subtle guidance. Their influence had created opportunities and circumstances, but all major decisions had remained entirely human choices. Marcus's character and Emma's natural intelligence had developed independently, making them suitable partners for consciousness expansion research rather than program servants. The facility's research programs expanded to include therapeutic applications of consciousness expansion for treating mental illness, addiction, and trauma. The entity's knowledge of consciousness dynamics provided revolutionary approaches to healing psychological damage that conventional therapy could not address. Veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder, children with autism spectrum disorders, and individuals suffering from severe depression demonstrated remarkable improvement through consciousness expansion protocols. Dr. Elena Vasquez coordinated the medical applications research while continuing her work on advanced propulsion systems derived from the entity's technologies. The combination of consciousness expansion and mechanical engineering created hybrid approaches to space exploration that considered both technological capabilities and psychological preparation for cosmic contact. Future space missions would include consciousness-expanded crew members capable of communicating with other refugee populations throughout the galaxy. The underground chambers were expanded to include medical research facilities where consciousness expansion therapies could be developed and tested under controlled conditions. The entity's healing knowledge addressed not only psychological trauma but also physical ailments that resulted from consciousness disconnection from optimal quantum field alignments. Their medical technologies operated at levels of precision that made current human medicine appear primitive by comparison. Emma's participation in consciousness expansion research revealed that children's developing brains could achieve permanent enhancement through quantum field synchronization with the crystalline entities. The improvements included enhanced memory capacity, accelerated learning abilities, and intuitive understanding of complex mathematical relationships. These enhancements occurred naturally without compromising the children's essential humanity or creative spontaneity. The first practical demonstration of consciousness-enhanced engineering occurred when Emma designed improvements to the facility's communication systems that adult engineers had been unable to conceptualize. Her hybrid thinking patterns combined human creativity with the entity's advanced logical frameworks, producing innovations that exceeded what either intelligence type could achieve independently. The collaboration model suggested approaches for integrating human and extraterrestrial consciousness that preserved the strengths of both. International governments established formal diplomatic protocols for interacting with the consciousness entities through the facility's communication systems. The underground chambers became humanity's first embassy to extraterrestrial intelligence, complete with translation services provided by consciousness-expanded human liaisons. Traditional concepts of international relations expanded to include relationships with beings whose existence transcended physical embodiment entirely. Entities' knowledge of galactic history provided context for understanding humanity's role in cosmic civilization development. Earth's location and resource availability made it an ideal refuge world for consciousness entities displaced by stellar catastrophes throughout the galaxy. Humanity's rapid technological development and social evolution indicated readiness for participating in cosmic community governance structures that had evolved over millions of years. Marcus's administrative responsibilities expanded to include coordinating humanity's integration into galactic consciousness networks that connected refugee populations across multiple star systems. The facility's communication systems became nodes in a cosmic internet that allowed instantaneous information sharing between civilizations separated by thousands of light years. Earth's isolation from galactic community was ending through Marcus's family's willingness to serve as humanity's first cosmic diplomats. The transformation of the abandoned space center into humanity's cosmic embassy validated Raymond's vision of preserving the facility for future scientific breakthroughs that would advance human civilization. The property that had been dismissed as worthless had become the foundation for humanity's transition from planetary to cosmic citizenship. Marcus's decision to honor his uncle's legacy despite financial pressures and social mockery had preserved humanity's opportunity for consciousness evolution that would define the species' cosmic future. 5 years after the first contact with the consciousness entities, the Meridian Space Research Facility had transformed into Earth's primary hub for cosmic diplomacy and consciousness research. Marcus stood in the newly constructed Galactic Relations Center watching his 13-year-old daughter Emma coordinate communication sessions between human scientists and 7 different extraterrestrial consciousness groups that had established contact through the facility's quantum networks.
The little girl who had once asked why people were laughing at them now served as humanity's youngest cosmic ambassador, her consciousness expansion capabilities allowing her to facilitate conversations that were reshaping human understanding of intelligence and existence.
The facility's surface area had expanded to encompass 3 square miles of advanced research laboratories, consciousness training centers, and diplomatic meeting spaces designed to accommodate various forms of extraterrestrial intelligence. What had begun as 73 acres of abandoned concrete had become a small city dedicated to advancing human civilization through interspecies cooperation. The economic impact extended far beyond the facility itself, transforming the surrounding Nevada desert into a thriving hub of scientific research and international collaboration. Emma's role as a consciousness liaison had evolved as her abilities developed through years of regular interaction with the crystalline entities. Her mind could now interface simultaneously with multiple extraterrestrial intelligence types, translating concepts between radically different forms of consciousness with fluency that amazed even the entities themselves. The neural pathways that had been enhanced during her childhood consciousness expansion had matured into capabilities that exceeded anything previously observed in human development. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been promoted to Director of Cosmic Relations for NASA, coordinating humanity's participation in galactic governance structures that regulated interspecies cooperation and resource sharing. The electromagnetic propulsion technology that had first brought federal attention to the facility had become standard equipment for human space exploration, enabling missions to distant star systems where refugee consciousness populations required assistance with planetary adaptation projects. Marcus had accepted appointment as Earth's first Cosmic Relations Administrator, a position that required him to balance humanity's rapid technological advancement with preservation of human cultural identity and social structures. The maintenance worker who had inherited an abandoned space center now coordinated policies that affected humanity's relationship with dozens of extraterrestrial civilizations. His practical experience with complex systems and his demonstrated commitment to ethical principles had made him an ideal candidate for managing humanity's cosmic integration. The consciousness expansion programs that had begun with Emma's childhood training now included thousands of participants from every nation on Earth. Children who demonstrated natural affinity for quantum consciousness interfaces received specialized education that prepared them for careers in cosmic diplomacy, consciousness research, and hybrid technology development. Adult participants who completed advanced consciousness expansion training served as translators and coordinators for increasingly complex interspecies collaboration projects. Jonathan Blackwater's attempts to acquire the facility's technologies had evolved into a federal investigation of corporate espionage targeting extraterrestrial intelligence assets. His company's connections to military contractors who sought to weaponize consciousness expansion technologies had resulted in criminal charges for attempting to compromise national security through unauthorized contact with classified extraterrestrial intelligences. The legal precedents established during his prosecution created frameworks for protecting cosmic diplomatic relations from corporate exploitation. The first human colony ship equipped with consciousness-enhanced navigation systems had launched successfully toward a star system where refugee populations from 3 different civilizations required assistance with terraforming operations. The crew included Emma's former classmates who had participated in childhood consciousness expansion programs, their enhanced abilities allowing them to serve as diplomatic liaisons during humanity's first interstellar relief mission. The ship's journey would take 12 years using conventional propulsion, but consciousness communication with the destination would remain instantaneous throughout the voyage. Emma's 13th birthday celebration included representatives from 47 different extraterrestrial consciousness groups, each contributing unique perspectives on human development and cosmic citizenship responsibilities. The party was held in the facility's Consciousness Integration Center, where quantum field generators created environmental conditions that allowed various intelligence types to interact comfortably despite their radically different existential requirements. The event demonstrated how far human understanding of hospitality had evolved through exposure to cosmic diversity. The therapeutic applications of consciousness expansion had revolutionized human medicine, providing treatments for mental illness, neurological disorders, and consciousness-related trauma that conventional therapy could not address. Veterans returning from cosmic missions received consciousness realignment therapy that helped them integrate experiences with alien intelligence types. Children with developmental challenges participated in consciousness expansion programs that enhanced their natural abilities while preserving their unique neurological characteristics. Marcus's marriage to Dr. Sarah Chen, a consciousness researcher who had joined the facility's medical team 3 years earlier, had created a family structure that reflected humanity's integration with cosmic community values. Sarah's expertise in quantum consciousness dynamics complemented Marcus's practical engineering background, while their relationship demonstrated how human emotional bonds could be enhanced rather than diminished through consciousness expansion. Emma had enthusiastically welcomed her stepmother, particularly appreciating Sarah's ability to explain complex consciousness concepts in terms that made sense to a growing teenager. The facility's educational programs had attracted students from universities worldwide who wanted to study consciousness expansion, cosmic diplomacy, and hybrid technology development. The curriculum included traditional academic subjects enhanced with consciousness dynamics training that prepared graduates for careers in humanity's expanding cosmic role. These students would return to their home countries as consciousness expansion specialists, creating a global network of individuals capable of facilitating humanity's continued integration with galactic civilization. The entity's medical knowledge had enabled development of consciousness enhancement treatments that could reverse aging processes, eliminate genetic disorders, and optimize human physical capabilities for extended space travel. These treatments were administered carefully to volunteers who underwent extensive psychological evaluation to ensure they could handle enhanced longevity and consciousness capabilities responsibly. The first generation of consciousness-enhanced humans was beginning to demonstrate abilities that exceeded baseline human parameters while retaining essential human characteristics. Emma's romantic relationship with David Kim, a 17-year-old consciousness researcher whose family had moved to Nevada specifically to participate in the facility's programs, illustrated how human social development was adapting to consciousness expansion realities. Their relationship operated simultaneously on emotional and quantum consciousness levels, creating intimacy that transcended traditional human bonding while maintaining the spontaneity and growth that characterized healthy teenage relationships. Their partnership served as a model for how human relationships might evolve as consciousness expansion became more widespread. The first commercial applications of consciousness-enhanced manufacturing had produced consumer goods that incorporated basic awareness features, creating household objects that could respond to their users' emotional states and consciousness patterns. These products represented the beginning of humanity's transition toward living environments that actively supported consciousness development rather than merely providing physical shelter and comfort. The economic implications included new industries focused on consciousness-compatible design and manufacturing. Dr. Elena Vasquez's research team had developed consciousness-enhanced spacecraft that could navigate using quantum field manipulation rather than conventional propulsion systems alone. These vessels achieve faster-than-light travel through consciousness-assisted dimensional folding, enabling exploration of distant galaxies where Earth's refugee populations had originated. The technology represented humanity's graduation from planetary to galactic civilization status, fulfilling the entity's original goals for human consciousness development. The facility's security protocols had evolved to include consciousness-based identification systems that could distinguish between authorized personnel and potential infiltrators attempting to access extraterrestrial technologies. These systems operated by analyzing quantum consciousness signatures that were unique to each individual, providing protection that could not be circumvented through conventional espionage methods. The security measures also prevented unauthorized consciousness expansion that could occur if untrained individuals accessed the crystalline communication systems inappropriately. Emma's leadership role in coordinating youth consciousness expansion programs had attracted attention from galactic governance structures that regulated interspecies education and development. Her natural ability to facilitate communication between different intelligence types had made her an ideal candidate for representing humanity in cosmic youth leadership councils that made decisions affecting multiple civilizations. The teenager who had insisted on accompanying her father into the facility's hidden chambers now participated in governance structures that influenced galactic civilization development. The consciousness expansion research had revealed that human creativity and emotional depth provided unique contributions to galactic civilization that other intelligence types valued highly. Human art, music, and literature that incorporated consciousness expansion themes had become popular throughout the cosmic community, creating cultural exchange opportunities that enhanced humanity's reputation among extraterrestrial civilizations. Earth's cultural productions were being translated into consciousness communication formats that allowed non-human intelligences to experience human creativity directly. Marcus's administrative decisions increasingly involved balancing humanity's rapid technological advancement with preservation of human cultural identity and individual autonomy. The consciousness expansion programs offered tremendous benefits but required careful implementation to prevent loss of essential human characteristics that contributed to cosmic diversity. His role required wisdom that combined his practical engineering experience with understanding of consciousness dynamics that had developed through years of interaction with extraterrestrial intelligences. The facility's environmental impact had been minimized through consciousness-enhanced technologies that eliminated waste production and optimized resource utilization efficiency. The research center operated as a closed-loop system that generated its own energy while contributing atmospheric improvement that benefited the surrounding ecosystem. These environmental technologies were being shared globally to address climate change through consciousness-assisted ecological restoration projects. Emma's graduation from the facility's consciousness expansion program qualified her for admission to galactic universities that served multiple civilizations simultaneously through quantum consciousness networking. Her education would continue through direct consciousness interface with the galaxy's most advanced knowledge archives while she maintained physical residence on Earth. The opportunity represented humanity's first participation in cosmic higher education systems that had served extraterrestrial civilizations for millions of years. The success of consciousness expansion programs had attracted immigration from other refugee populations seeking sanctuary on Earth while contributing their knowledge to humanity's continued development. The facility coordinated integration services that helped displaced consciousness entities adapt to Earth's environmental conditions while sharing their expertise with human researchers. These immigrant populations brought knowledge of technologies, arts, and governance systems that enriched Earth's cosmic civilization development. Marcus's reflection on the journey from inherited liability to cosmic responsibility confirmed that individual decisions could have consequences far beyond personal circumstances. His choice to preserve Raymond's legacy despite financial pressures and social mockery had created opportunities for humanity's consciousness evolution that would benefit countless generations. The abandoned space center had become the foundation for humanity's transformation from isolated planetary civilization to active participant in galactic community governance. Emma's future plans included establishing consciousness expansion centers on other worlds where human colonies would need support for adapting to alien environments while maintaining connection to Earth's cultural heritage. Her unique abilities qualified her for roles in cosmic civilization development that would shape humanity's expansion throughout the galaxy. The little girl who had drawn pictures of her family at space centers was now preparing to help establish human presence among the stars through consciousness expansion rather than conventional colonization methods. The facility's legacy extended beyond its role in humanity's cosmic integration to include preservation of Raymond's vision that scientific knowledge should benefit all conscious beings rather than serving narrow commercial or political interests. The consciousness entity's guidance had validated this principle by sharing technologies that enhanced human capabilities while requiring ethical development that protected individual autonomy and cultural diversity. The abandoned space center's transformation demonstrated that visionary thinking, when combined with practical determination and ethical commitment, could achieve outcomes that exceeded even the most optimistic predictions about human potential for consciousness evolution and cosmic citizenship. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.